It's 1:22 a.m. on June 24, 2021. Cassandra Stratton is on the phone with her husband, describing a strange sight from her fourth-floor balcony. The pool deck outside has just caved into an enormous crater. It looks like something from a sinkhole, she says. Her husband, back in Colorado, tells her to get out immediately. Before she can respond, the line goes dead. 8 minutes later, at exactly 1:30 a.m., security cameras capture what happens next. The center and eastern portions of Champlain Towers South, a 12-story luxury condo building, begin to fall. Floor by floor, the structure pancakes downward in a horrifying sequence. 12 stories collapse into a pile of rubble in just 12 seconds. The sound is so loud it wakes people miles away. Some think it's an earthquake. Others believe it's a bomb. Inside, 98 people are sleeping. Families, elderly residents, young children. In those 12 seconds, their world literally falls apart. Some residents in the still-standing portion run for their lives as walls crack and floors tilt. A 15-year-old boy is pulled from the rubble after 8 hours. A mother and daughter survive by pure luck, their beds landing on debris that save them from being crushed. But for 98 others, there is no escape. This wasn't a natural disaster. This wasn't a terrorism. This was an engineering failure 40 years in the making. A failure that engineers had documented, that Condo board members had discussed, and that could have been prevented. 3 years before the collapse, a structural engineer sent a warning. The building was deteriorating. Repairs were critical. The cost, $9 million. The Condo board decided to wait. This is the investigation into what went wrong at Surfside, and why 98 people paid the price for that decision. Champlain Towers South wasn't just any building. When it opened in 1981, it was a symbol of Miami Beach luxury. Designed by architect William Friedman and built by developer Nathan Reiber, the property consisted of 3 towers, north, south, and east. Tower South, where the collapse occurred, had 136 units spread across 12 floors. Oceanfront views, a pool deck, underground parking. It was prime real estate worth millions. But there was a problem from the very beginning, hidden in the foundation. The building sat on reclaimed swampland near the Atlantic Ocean. The original design called for a flat concrete slab beneath the pool deck, supported by columns below in the parking garage. This design had a critical flaw. It was vulnerable to something called punching shear failure, where heavy loads cause columns to punch through the slab above them. Worse, the building's waterproofing was inadequate. For decades, salt water from the ocean air and pool deck seeped into the concrete. Salt accelerates the corrosion of rebar, the steel reinforcement inside concrete. As rebar rusts, it expands, cracking the concrete around it. This creates more openings for water, which causes more corrosion. It's a vicious cycle. And at Champlain Towers South, it had been happening since 1981. By the 1990s, residents began noticing problems. Cracks in the garage ceiling, water pooling in the basement after heavy rains, chunks of concrete falling from overhead. Some complained about constant dampness and a musty smell. Maintenance crews patched the cracks, but they never addressed the root cause. The building wasn't just aging, it was rotting from the inside out. By 2018, the situation had become dangerous, and someone finally decided to document it. In October 2018, the Champlain Towers South Condo Association hired Morabito Consultants, a structural engineering firm, to conduct a 40-year recertification inspection. Florida law requires buildings to be inspected at 40 years old to ensure they're still structurally sound. Frank Morabito, a licensed engineer, led the assessment. What he found was alarming. His report, submitted on October 8, 2018, didn't mince words. The pool deck's waterproofing had failed below the pool deck and was beyond its useful life. Translation: water had been leaking into the structure for years, possibly decades. Morabito documented abundant cracking in the concrete columns and slabs in the parking garage below the pool. He noted that the concrete had been laid on a flat structure, which prevented water from draining properly. Standing water was everywhere. More troubling, Morabito observed exposed rebar, steel reinforcement bars that had corroded so badly they were visible through the concrete. In structural engineering, exposed rebar is a red flag. It means the concrete's protective layer has failed, and the steel inside is rusting. Rusted rebar loses strength, and when it expands, it cracks the surrounding concrete. This is how buildings begin to fail. Morabito's conclusion: the failed waterproofing is causing major structural damage to the concrete structural slab below. He recommended removing the pool deck entirely, repairing the damaged concrete, and installing a proper waterproofing system. The estimated cost, $9 million for all necessary repairs across the building, with the pool deck work being the most urgent. The Condo board reviewed the report. Then, they did nothing. The repairs were expensive. Residents would have to pay special assessments. Some board members argued the work could wait. After all, the building had stood for almost 40 years. What's a few more? 3 years later, the building fell. So why didn't they fix it? The answer is a mix of money, politics, and human psychology, a dangerous combination when lives are at stake. First, the money. The $9 million repair bill would have been split among the 136 units in Champlain Towers South. That's roughly $66,000 per unit. For many residents, especially retirees on fixed incomes, this was an unimaginable expense. Some had already paid $600,000 or more for their condos. Now they were being asked to pay an additional $66,000 for repairs most couldn't even see. The damage was in the garage, underground, out of sight. It didn't feel urgent. Second, the politics. Condo boards are elected by residents, and board members who approve massive assessments are rarely popular. In 2018 and 2019, the Champlain Towers South board was divided. Some members pushed for immediate action. Others wanted to explore cheaper alternatives or phase the work over several years to reduce the financial burden. Meetings grew contentious. Residents argued. Engineers explained the risks, but without a sense of imminent danger, the warnings felt abstract. Third, the psychology. Humans are bad at assessing invisible risks. The building had stood for 40 years. Cracks and water leaks had been present for decades, yet the building hadn't fallen. This created a false sense of security, a cognitive bias called normalcy bias. If it hasn't happened yet, it won't happen at all. The Condo board wasn't filled with villains. They were ordinary people who simply couldn't imagine their building collapsing. By 2021, the board had finally begun moving forward with the repairs. Bids were being reviewed. Work was scheduled to begin later that year, but time had run out. On June 24th, at 1:30 a.m., the pool deck gave way. The columns below punched through the slab, and the building followed. The collapse happened in phases. First, the pool deck slab failed, crashing into the parking garage below. This was the crater Cassandra Stratton saw from her balcony at 1:22 a.m. The sudden loss of the pool deck destabilized the columns supporting the building's eastern wing. Those columns were already weakened by decades of corrosion. When the pool deck fell, they were overloaded. At 1:30 a.m., the eastern section of the building began to collapse. Floors pancaked downward. The 12th floor crashed onto the 11th, which crashed onto the 10th, and so on all the way to the ground. The force was catastrophic. Concrete, steel, furniture, and lives were compressed into a 30-foot tall pile of rubble. Survivors in the still-standing portion described hearing an explosion-like sound, followed by walls cracking and floors tilting at impossible angles. Rescue efforts began immediately. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue arrived within minutes, searching for survivors. In the first hours, they pulled several people from the rubble, including a teenage boy and a mother with her daughter. But as hours turned to days, hope faded. The remaining structure was dangerously unstable. On July 4th, engineers made the difficult decision to demolish the standing portion to allow safer access to the rubble. By July 26th, all 98 victims had been recovered. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, launched a federal investigation, only the 6th such investigation in US history. Their preliminary findings pointed to the pool deck as the likely initiation point. Corrosion, design flaws, and deferred maintenance had created a perfect storm. The building S-columns couldn't handle the loads they were designed for because the concrete had lost structural integrity. But questions remained. Why did the collapse spread so rapidly? Could the building have been saved if repairs had started in 2018? And most importantly, how many other buildings are silently deteriorating right now?